Alrighty, good morning everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, the 6th of May. And we are reading today from 2 Samuel. We finally finished the book of 1 Samuel and we're reading from 2 Samuel, the first chapter. And to give it a little bit of context, what's happened, Saul has died and a young man, an Amalekite, has come running from the battle to come and tell David what happened. So it picks up in verse 4. "What happened?" David asked. "Tell me." "The men fled from the battle," he replied. "Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan are dead." Then David said to the young man who brought him the report, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa," the man said, "and there was Saul leaning on his spear with the chariots and their drivers in hot pursuit. When he turned around and saw me, he called out to me and said, and I asked, 'What can I do?' He asked me, 'Who are you?' 'An Amalekite,' I answered. Then he said to me, 'Stand here by me and kill me. I'm in the throes of death, but I'm still alive.' So I stood beside him and killed him, because I knew that after he had fallen, he could not survive. And I took the crown that was on his head and the band on his arm, and have brought them here to my Lord." And so this is a lie, because we read earlier on at the end of 1 Samuel 28, that Saul actually killed himself. He fell on his own sword along with his armor bearer. And so what happens is this young guy comes and claims something that he hadn't actually done. And David accuses him, after mourning for Saul, he accuses this young man of turning his hand against God's anointed, or raising his hand against God's anointed. And David ends up executing this young Amalekite who claimed to have killed Saul. And so what's interesting in the story is everything's going well up until verse 6. Because David says to him, "How do you know that Saul and Jonathan are dead?" But right before that, he gives the information as it stood. "The men fled from the battle. Many of them fell and died. Saul and his son Jonathan are dead." Now, if he just left it there, everything would have been fine. He probably would have got a reward. Everything would have been fine. But at that point, when David said, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" this young guy decided to embellish the story a little bit and, zazz it up a little bit and rate his role in the story a little bit more than it should have actually been. He ended up lying. And you can see, he wanted to impress David. The reason he did this was he wanted to kind of get into David's good books. Now, there might have been a million reasons why he wanted to do this, obviously to favor maybe a reward or something. Could have also been that he was an Amalekite. And if you remember a couple of chapters earlier, David went and the Amalekites attacked the hometown where David used to live and ran off with David's wives and kids and everyone. And then David went and smashed the Amalekites and brought them back. So this guy's an Amalekite, so he's like trying to suck up to David a little bit. But this is the point of the story, and hopefully this is something that we can bring home for ourselves. If we find ourselves desperate to please others for whatever the reason is, it will eventually always bring us to a place of paying a cost that we can't afford. This young guy ended up paying with his life. But the cost can be all kinds of costs. I think about in our work, that perhaps what we do is we try and cut corners a little bit, and we're a little bit dishonest about the way we go about doing our work. With this tough economic climate at the moment and what people are experiencing, it's very easy to maybe over-embellish things or over-promise on things, or perhaps just bend the rules a little bit. And what it actually shows, when we do this kind of stuff, when we are more concerned with pleasing man than we are with pleasing God, when we're more worried about what man thinks about us than what God thinks about us, it exposes what's really going on inside of our heart, because it shows that we have Amalekite type thinking. And what I mean by Amalekite thinking is, Amalekite thinking goes like this. They have no God, the Amalekites. So when the Amalekite guy rocks up, it's just him and David. And so he has to do everything he can, the Amalekite has to do everything he can to make a way for himself in front of this guy who's going to be king, the King David. But Israelite thinking is this: I don't have to make a way for myself. We see that time and time again with David. When it came to dealing with Saul, he didn't raise his hand against Saul. He didn't fight against Saul. He didn't ever have to step up or do stuff which was beyond him, because he realized in God's timing, God would raise him up. He had God on his side. And that's the very thing that David actually takes this Amalekite up for. He says to him, he didn't know that the guy was lying. He thought the guy actually had killed Saul. He takes the guy and he says, "You have tried to make a plan for yourself and you raised your hand against God's anointed." And friends, I think there is a real temptation in all of this stuff where we have a Malachite type thinking, where I take my eyes off God, I take my eyes off the fact that He is in control and that He's the one who's promised me a hope and a future. And I'm not sticking my head in the ground and pretending like everything's peachy and everything's perfect. But it's very easy in moments like this to slip over from Israelite thinking, where I'm like David. I'm saying, Lord, everything I have, I receive from you. Every good and perfect gift I have comes from you. And to kind of turn and to be like an Amalekite and go, I'm just going to do whatever I can. If I have to lie, if I have to cheat, if I have to steal, whatever I have to do to try and cut corners here to make this thing work for myself. The danger of doing that is that I end up having to pay a cost, which eventually or ultimately I can't afford to pay. I do think that there's something huge, though, also on a personal level. And I just want to talk to any of us who are leading at the moment in any sphere, husbands, wives, moms, dads, whatever the sphere is, in business, whatever the place is where you're leading, as a teacher. It's incredibly important that we allow God to deal with this thing on the inside of us, where we are so desperate to please others. And I know that it's inherent in all of us. No one wants to be disliked. But it's impossible to truly help people and lead them into a hope and a future when we are so worried about what everybody else thinks. In fact, it was the thing that took Saul out eventually. He was so insecure about David, and he ended up paying with his life. And the same with this young Amalekite guy. He didn't give 2 moments thought. He just saw a moment. He thought, no one else was there. They won't know. I'll just lie. And he told a lie to try and please others. And in doing so, he ended up having to pay this incredible cost. And I think we can think sometimes, if we talk the story up, if we're so worried about what people think, we can win them to our good graces and then we can lead them. I've come to realize in my own life that how I begin or how I want to finish is how I should begin. It's no good starting lying and trying to suck up to people and trying to ingratiate myself to people. I'm not talking about being polite. I'm just saying when I'm trying to please others in the beginning, when it comes time to eventually, if I've tried to live my life like that, and then I put my spear down and go, now I want to lead, people are going to be like, hey, where did you come from? You know, you're this guy with no backbone who just slips up to everybody, and now all of a sudden you want to lead. We need to look at what is the end result of how I want to live my life, and I want to start living my life like that. And so as leaders and parents and whatever the sphere is that you are leading in at the moment, can I ask you this? To get before God and to get into His presence, and Lord, let your opinion of me, what you say to me, be the most important thing. Lord, I surrender the need to try and make my life happen to you. I'm going to work hard, Lord, but I'm going to work hard with what you've called me to do. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to cut corners. And I'm not going to be over concerned about impressing everybody else around me. I want to impress you first and foremost, Lord. We'll see you tomorrow morning.